Hi there! How are you doing? I hope you're keeping safe and sound.
What I'd say was that it's sort of a bit like an apocalypse, something that you would think you'd see in a movie.
Because I live on my own. I think I feared that I wouldn't be able to cope more than I feared the lockdown itself, if you know what I mean. However, I surprised myself, and after about week 4, I was into a routine. I'm a creature of habit anyway, so I found a routine helps. Getting up, get breakfast, go for my first walk, come back, do emails, admin stuff, have lunch. I restrict my reading and social media stuff on coronavirus because I found that a bit overwhelming at first. So I do 10 minutes of Nicola at 12:30 every day. Then the afternoon I might read, listen to music, do something different like try my hand at sketching, or I'm trying to learn Italian too. And then of course now we can have an evening walk, which is great.
When I was traveling, I went to the Royal Infirmary to volunteer. Um, and when I was traveling there, you couldn't get on a bus. Taxis were few and far between. I phoned up city cabs once to get a taxi, and they said there was two cars on the whole day. So they said that the possibility of you getting a taxi in the next hour is not going to happen.
A very, very strange period to not be with our folks, with our people. So I think the biggest change for us is being almost like forced into a nuclear living experience. We usually live quite communally, and we like to kind of share our home with our family and friends, and being forced into this weird nuclear family space where it's like two parents and two children is really different for us. Although we lived in a family for a long time, so that was one of the biggest changes, was having to learn to accept a bit of what's it like if we were not able to see family and friends.
But the reality is that for us as a family of 4, life didn't all that much change. I mean, of course it did. It was flipped on its head in lots of ways, but at worst it was just a bit strange. The kids were of an age to know that things were different. Life wasn't exactly the same.
Because of the coronavirus. Because of the coronavirus.
What's the coronavirus?
Germs.
I'm a freelance copywriter. I work from home. I'm single. I live alone. So, you know, on the face of it, not much different. In other ways, very, 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 a big difference is because the little things that I used to use to break up my day, like go to the cafe and have a coffee and do the crossword, couldn't do that the same way. Obviously, can't see my friends or my family. My family, my immediate family, all live very nearby, so I'm used to seeing them a lot. So that was a big difference, and it made it hard. And I think to start with, I wasn't coping with it very well at all. I was just so surprised, and yeah, kind of in shock and not really accepting the situation. But over time, I've been able to adapt to it and got a bit more used to it.
Since January, I've been in a bubble with a friend, and when I say a bubble, he lives in his house, I live in my house, but I go up to his place once a week for a meal, and he comes to my place. So though entertaining is relatively small, I've probably entertained far more than I had done in the last 15 or 20 years.
Okay, I've been spending lockdown mostly by myself. A typical lockdown day, maybe Thursday to Sunday, would be go to work, be there till 2, come back, or maybe sometimes I'd stay longer, do overnight shifts. Typical day during lockdown is not having a clue what I'm going to do when I get up in the morning, and now I'm kind of ending up staying up till about 4 o'clock, sleeping till about 6, so my sleeping patterns all over the place. So I get mad ideas in the middle of the night. But yeah, sleeping pattern's different. And as I said, I've spent most of the time on my own.
Myself, I found isolating a bit difficult. I live alone, I live with a cat, but I live alone, no other adults living in the house. So it's been over 3 months without company at home or visitors coming, and the last couple of weeks have been a bit easier to see family and friends and my grandchildren and stuff like that, my daughter. But I've not found it too difficult. I've still had work to go to 5 days a week, 40 hours. So, but yeah, looking forward to getting back to the volunteering again and making sure that I see people that are been keeping themselves safe. But lockdown for me, as I say, has been pretty easy. A bit isolated, but easy enough.
I mean, I live in the centre of Edinburgh, and you know, that first week or two of lockdown, this place was a ghost town. Like, there was nobody about. It was so weird. It was so weird when Boris, our Prime Minister, got the bloody corona. Yeah, those first couple of weeks were rough for sure. Nobody knew what was going on. Let's be honest. Not even no one, no doctors did, no governments did. I think it was really humbling for a lot of people in power and a lot of people not in power to show, look, we're only a tiny, insignificant little dot that can change on the whim of nature at any point. And you know, as much as everyone thinks they have plans and they think they've got savings and they think that it doesn't, you know, things can change in an instant.
The next day, so lockdown, first full day was the Tuesday, and my boss gave me a call to ask me to go in on the Wednesday to finish off one job, which was for a printing for a court case. It was evidence. Needed to be finished, so I remember going along to work. It was just a 10-minute walk from my house, and just feeling so nervous. You know, the place was deserted, and you know, kind of used gloves to get into work, and it was fine in work. But just I remember the feeling of nerves. And so that was my final work until, well, pretty much now. Where are we? We're in the middle of July, I think.
And particularly my industry, which was the corporate travel industry, everything was changing. Those meetings that were still going on in companies were now starting to happen online, and everybody was learning to do things that they always felt they could never do before. You know, corporate customers, you know, could never have a meeting. They always had to go and shake hands. They always had to go and have dinner with the people. They always had to be there to physically sign a contract. And all of a sudden, those things didn't matter any longer, and it was possible for them to do them online. So it was quite obvious that my industry was going to come to an end.
Alongside dealing with the fact that the lab absolutely closed, and for 3 months we did no practical work, the instruments that I had, I was still able to go in as an essential worker, but we weren't allowed to operate them, we weren't allowed to do sample analysis, and so we could only maintain them. Some elements of these instruments require maintenance, so I turned them into a very static mode, and that was how they were left. It was only as we approached the May time that we started to set up the lab again in order for us to embark upon a particular COVID research study where we would analyse samples that had come from COVID patients, and we had to deal with the health and safety aspects of returning to a building that was also conducting research.
And working from home is not a big change for me. I'm a lecturer at the university. There is a bit of online teaching, of course, some new software to learn. But again, the online element doesn't affect my job. I mean, I'm doing the same job.
Maybe this is not the right career. Maybe I should listen to Rishi Sunak and retrain as something else. I mean, the thought is fundamentally depressing, but, you know, it's always an option. The arts in general shouldn't have to be retraining, of course. I mean, it's a stupid argument for a lot of reasons, not just financially, but, you know, emotionally, creatively, morally, and all of the things that creativity and arts represents.
So I can't find a job just now. I actually am a therapist, so I'm a hands-on therapist, so I can't touch anybody. And I'm also training to do EMDR therapy as well. So I'm a counsellor. So I know we can do sessions through Zoom and Skype, but that would entail me either setting up a business, which takes time, and again, not in person. So I know that there are opportunities that I might need to work towards, but currently, at present, I haven't been able to find a job in my profession. Competition is fierce, and the conditions of the interview are really, really challenging. And what I've had to do now is try and find a job at a different skill set. So I'm now looking at jobs that perhaps require less of my skill set, which might mean I'm overqualified for jobs. So I'm really struggling, to be honest with that.
I think a lot of people get a lot of their self-worth and, you know, get a lot of their self-esteem from their work, from their studies. You know, and I think to take that away from some people is going to be incredibly damaging, if not more damaging than the virus itself.
I work as a performing artist, and in the week before lockdown happened, I just watched all my work that I'd lined up for the year and all my regular work being cancelled. And at that point, I suppose, we didn't know whether there'd be any support for people that are self-employed. I'm self-employed. So I did decide to go back to doing care and support work, which I've done before, but not for at least 5 years.
Now, before the pandemic restrictions took hold of the country, my main job, at least 5 nights a week, was an entertainer, travelling all over. As a result of this, I've not had any income for more than 15 months. But then I suppose I've been lucky enough to have some savings, and this has got me through most of this. but they are now very, very limited.
I've been volunteering for the Royal Infirmary for about 2 years. I'm also a full-time key worker for clients who are deaf and blind and no communication. My experience with lockdown has been working full-time still, isolating obviously when I need to, social distancing and safeguarding my service users who I work with. I've not been volunteering at the hospital obviously because my job have told me that I can't. That's fine, but I do believe that I'm able to come back quite soon and start volunteering again, which I'm quite excited about because I've missed it. It's been quite a while.
I'm just about to graduate university, so I'm going to be class of 2020 in the middle of a pandemic, which is kind of fucking crazy. I also was just in the beginnings of starting my own business, which is kind of ground to a halt because of the whole virus. Not that it's all over or that it's going to be terrible. I actually think there might be some opportunities in it. But yeah, for everyone, Corona's been a huge adjustment for me. I was working right up until the lockdown order went in place, literally right up until Boris said, hey, we can't go anywhere. I was working. So things had to change very rapidly. I was like, where am I gonna get money to pay my rent? Where am I gonna go? Because I'd kind of taken my foot off the gas for university because I was concentrating so much on my own business.
For the Italian community in Scotland, the situation at the beginning was unreal. Everyone was in touch with their Italian family, and in Italy,
last but not least, I think it's even the most important thing for me is homesickness. And I never felt homesick because I've been living abroad for a long time, and I kind of used to this thing to speak with my family and friends through Skype or whatever. But when the lockdown started, I realized how much I miss my home and how important for me is to be there and come back actually. And I was worried about my family, how they are doing and stuff like that. And now it's the end of May, and lockdown restrictions are much easier in my home country, and they actually opened up flights to many countries, but not to UK, and I can't come back, and that's really bothering me because at the moment I'm living on the edge of waiting when I can go back home, even though before I never planned to go home for a summer, right? But now I feel like it's very important for me to come back because I miss my family, I miss my friends, and I kind of feel like I shouldn't be here, I should be with them. If something happens, I should be there, you know. So this waiting is killing me actually.
I had to admit that the lockdown really changed my life because before the lockdown, I planned after I graduate I will back to China and I will meet my parents because I have not seen them for a long time, about 3 years, you know. I really miss them.
New learning. Did I learn something new? I learned a lot from the situation. I learned a lot from the fact that I am bilingual and it's very handy to read the news in more than one language and to get possibly a less biased perspective of the news. I'm really glad. I really would like to learn more languages because now I have seen the benefit of having a more multiple perspective.
So I just think it's interesting, people's risk perception can be a little off sometimes when, particularly my views on climate change and how that is just, it is a real threat to the planet and it's happening already, and yet people don't seem as remotely half as worried about that as coronavirus. Yeah, okay, it's still a killer, but so is air pollution. Why aren't people not driving? You know, where's the moral panic around air pollution and driving and the carbon emissions from driving? Why are we moralising about people not wearing masks in public, or, these debates that are going on social media?
Bye bye, my beloved. Take care, look after yourselves.